Hey, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM players.
This is like those. You ever watch those videos which drive me crazy when you're watching a video when someone's trying to explain everything and they talk as if they have deep gravitas and they don't. They'll go like, I just unboxed the box. And they
Guess
do
what?
that, all that hesitance in between.
That's
What
like I learned that from Casey Kasem.
I loved him.
Hello, this is Casey Kasem, and this is your top 40 or whatever.
See, he could get away with it. You can kind of get away with it too, but those other people,
Well, I have to go into the real. Hey, this is Brent Leary live. No, that I hate doing.
And yeah, then I'll go, hey, and I'm Paul Greenberg.
Yeah, that just doesn't sound right.
No,
It doesn't feel right.
definitely.
But what does feel right is we're the CRM players.
That always feels right, and it's felt right for 14 plus years now.
You know why? Because we've been bringing the ass.
I know.
Since 2009.
I still, every time I see that, I'm thinking of Arizona. I can't help myself every single time. Bringing the as to, you said bringing the as to GA or bringing the as to VA. So bringing Arizona to Georgia, bringing Arizona to New York, to Virginia.
You know what I've been thinking about? January is not that far away. That'll be year number 15.
I know. It's like that's a big deal anniversary.
We might have to do something special or something.
I think so. That's a big deal anniversary.
Maybe we actually do something live.
Ooh.
Like somewhere.
You mean like an event live or
person? Like when people actually come and talk and shake hands and for you hug face to face.
I think a lovely location would be the city of Atlanta.
Well, or Phoenix, because then we could bring the ass.
The ass squared.
You know what? We've been tap dancing because kind of waiting for the usual moment, and I'm afraid here we might have to send out the police.
The ass police.
I'm not. You got to be careful how you say that.
The ads police.
We are missing the moment is Finn because we're missing this Finn in the moment.
Oh my God. At least he gives way to a pretty decent play on words.
Yeah. Well, while we hopefully we'll keep an eye out and get the APP ready. But in the meantime, we are the PPN network and stuff is coming up. Look at this. The In the Hot Seat crew. This upcoming Monday, the 14th. The impact of AI on your role.
Wow.
What's the impact on our role? I mean, what would happen?
My role should have pastrami and mustard. That's what I care about. I don't really care about any other role.
Well, we will listen and watch. That'll be Monday, this upcoming Monday, 1:00. And co-hosting for this one is Mike Fawcett and Jason Lundy.
As always, it'll be amazing content. Absolutely. I mean, what is a CMO AI advisor exactly?
You'll have to tune in on Monday at 1:00 to find out. It should be interesting. I'm looking forward to that one. Okay, and then I think, let me do this one because he is on a roll, folks. Mr. Insights, and look at who he's got on with him. Coming up on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. The one and only, the lovable Liz. Ooh, I like that. Lovable Liz Miller.
Holy cow. Look at the destructive nature of platitudes. Catch this. The destructive nature of platitudes. That sounds wonderful.
And don't leave out the false research and how they both impact executive decisioning and customer engagement.
Seems like that executive decisioning and customer engagement thing is becoming the theme of Whispered Insights.
Yeah, well, that's why, I still think the actual theme should be George Michael. doing that.
Well, although I'll tell you, look, they really. By the way, everybody listening, Chanel Wheeler is the person who does all the graphics, and she does an amazing job. Yeah, I think you saw the note I just saw.
Yeah, it says it's on, but let me.
Yeah, apparently those of you who are listening or who don't know you're listening is because it's not loading on LinkedIn.
Maybe that's why Sven is not there then.
That's a very good possibility. Well, I sent
Although
it
I
to
see
my
it on
LinkedIn.
mine, I do
All
see
right.
it showing up. So
And
maybe
I will check on mine.
maybe it's a blip. Maybe we got a little bit of a blip going on, but hopefully it'll be there for you. Maybe refresh. Why are we telling people to refresh who aren't getting it now? So us telling them to refresh isn't really doing anything. Let's hope that they go ahead and refresh on their own. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. The one and only Alan Berkson says it is on. It's good to know. And it's good to know that Alan is out there watching for reasons that you shall soon know about. Anyway, so the show Whispered Insights is just building really good momentum. Let me play a clip from the last show because Esteban's co-host for that one is somebody that we've known for a long time.
So I've known her since she was an Army brat.
The one and only Lauren Vargas. And here, let me just set it up. They were talking about, Esteban mentioned that on a previous CRM player show, when I think it was when we had Vala and all the evangelist kind of folks on. Remember, I think it was like last year, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And Vala said something that stuck with Esteban about how he doesn't like to tell stories. He likes to tell narratives because stories have an ending and narratives go on and evolve. And so he was asking Lauren because she's a community expert. She is so used to dealing with executive level folks and helping them kind of pull their narratives together. You might call them corporate narratives if Alan is out there listening. But this is how she approaches the conversations around narratives with executives.
Organizations to create a custom narrative. How are we putting that all together? How are we creating a story around it? Sometimes I take those variables and put them into an already existing narrative, a story. And I don't use stories that have a crisp, clean ending. I like the short stories. I like to use those stories if I'm using something that's already existing that have like some really type of twist or open question, or that are truly like ongoing. They're not like, it's not a closed thing. Then based upon that, it's figuring out, all right, what do we need to do? What do we need to have in place? What is that talent? What are those skills? What are those resources? What are those long-term funding models? Where do we want to start to put in milestones for that short-term, those short-term wins that, start those snackable wins that start to add up? And so it's more of a consistent everyday practice. It's not something that's one and done, but it's something that you are continuously feeding and reevaluating and challenging those variables within that narrative.
Do you have a microphone nearby that you can drum, or?
I had to put that last part in because it's seldom that Esteban is left speechless. And I think Lauren actually did that.
Yes, she did. And she's right. It's interesting, though, the way she identifies it, too, with the twists in the stories as being kind of mission critical to the story she chooses to tell, rather than something that has a clean ending. Because a clean ending, leaves no room for thought. It just basically becomes a best practice at most.
Yeah, there's no clean endings in corporate narratives.
None.
It's like we're crying in baseball. We might know somebody who might have a few things to say about that. But
guess who's here?
Running late with massive internet problems. Wow, he's in Tunisia.
Yeah.
Cool. I wonder how the nights are in Tunisia. Even our guest in the green room, although I shudder to call him a guest, he literally started shaking his head just as soon as you said ay ay ay.
Yeah, I know.
I take that as a
pretty good.
compliment.
Now that said, Sven does have a greeting.
Yeah, he does.
And you know what? Given where he is, I am
Tunisian.
guessing that's the Tunisian dialect of Arabic.
I'm gonna go with Tunisian.
Well,
Although I don't
Tunisian's
even know if
Arab.
that's
It's
a language.
Arabic. It's a dialect of
It's a
Arabic.
Tunisian Arabic language.
Yep, that's what it is. This is the Tunisian dialect of Arabic.
And I'll say that's my final answer, Alex. So we'll see. All right, Sven, let us know if we're right. Oh, let me put that down. Let us know if we're right or wrong. I'm guessing we have a good shot at this one.
Yeah, I say so.
He finally gave us a little clue there.
Rather large hint.
And one more, let's say plug for this. I'll throw this over to you.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. I mean, look, we've known these three guys forever. Okay, all three of them independently of each other.
Maybe a fourth.
Yeah, we'll leave that out until we know.
Yes,
but there's a good possibility there's going to be a fourth founder here. No, so the key to all these three founders, each a $1 billion company, each with a very different story on how the company evolved, and all three of them good guys, great storytellers, knowledgeable, and have real experience and history in the industry. And also the outcomes, even though they're three companies in pretty much the same broad category in the industry, very different companies in all three cases. And so the paths will be fascinating. The people are great to talk with. All three of them, tremendous conversationalists. This is going to be, it's not only going to be like instructive, because you're talking about three people who have been there from the beginning of their company and still are there running those companies, but it will be fun. It'll really be fun. These guys are great.
All right. Yeah, I can't wait for that. And hopefully, like in golf, we'll have a fourth. We'll see.
Okay. As long as he's not betting $1 billion on the golf tournament.
And also coming up later this month, we've got a gear show. Yeah, and we've got the return of Buffalo Bob.
That's right. And there'll be an announcement shortly for next week's Playaz. We'll have the announcement ready. The guest for Engage with Paul and Kenny, and I will next week also tell you which company will be focused on for the next Talking Headless. But I won't tell you what I like and what I dislike. You'll have to watch the show.
Nice tease.
Beautiful.
Well, you know what else is nice?
I know.
And now it's time for Stump the Godfather with the venerable Paul Greenberg. Brought to you by Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot.
And you could never get enough of Benny.
No, you can always see my excitement about all this.
You can never get enough of the golden smog of CRM.
No, of course not. That's literally what I'd love to happen. Is as soon as he's done, that's the end of the segment.
Unfortunately for you, and very fortunately for me, and for the viewing audience, whoever's there, we have to go on because we have a brand new Stump the Godfather question. And I made sure I emphasize stump because it has come up every now and again.
Every now and again. How about every now and not again, right? Or always, only it comes up literally at least once a week.
Every now and again, I may slip and say stump, but I truly
you hear what you just said? You said every now and then I might slip and say stump.
I thought I said stump.
I think not very clearly. Stump. Not very clearly. Do playback. Do the replay. We can't do that yet.
I ought to be sounding crystal clear. I should be very easy to understand, given how much money I just sunk into some of the stuff we're using. Anyway, moving on. The Stump the Godfather question this week brought to you by Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot. Global traffic for ChatGPT reached 1.8 billion in April. That wasn't that far ago, huh? A couple months ago.
May, June,
Well-
July, 3 months.
What was it in July?
Okay. That's
All right. So anybody who wants in on it, start throwing your answers in the comments. Even look, even one of our guests is already even. Wow, 14 billion. That's
yeah.
14 billion. Wow, that's a huge jump. Wait a minute. How many people are there? Anyway, 14 billion is what Josh says. Our Mr. Corporate Narrative, if you want to throw a shot out there, let us know. Patrick, Rebecca, anybody else? Finn. We've never had a Tunisian entry into Stump the Godfather. That would be cool.
Technically, we're not really having one now. We're having one from Tunisia.
Alan says 2.6 billion.
Well,
Rebecca
Brian's
says
here.
8 billion.
Brian.
I like to call him Big Tex, Brian Summers, because I like to. I'll say it was. What else should we expect from Brian?
I'm going to call him the Story Wrangler.
All right. So far we've got
Story Wrangler.
I'm going to give you the numbers that we've got so far. We've got Josh at 14, Alan at 2.6, Rebecca at 6. No, is that 6? Yeah, 8. Rebecca at 8. Rebecca, no Patrick entry this week. Brian is whatever.
More than one.
All right. So the Venerable Paul Greenberg, your answer to this question
4.2 billion.
4.2 billion. Okay. Josh, $1 for Patrick. That was last week's Patrick.
That's right. Well, that's all Patrick knows how to answer. He goes with his paw.
So we've got anywhere from $1 all the way up to 14 billion. The answer is
there's Patrick's answer.
Oh, wait a minute. There's okay. Does that mean 4 billion?
Yeah.
All right, we'll say woof 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 means Patrick is in for 4 billion.
That's right. So I'm slightly higher than him. Yeah.
Here
Alan, that goes to the oy vey level also.
Yeah, for real.
Just so you know.
It also gets the eye roll too. There.
That would be next video we have, an eye roll.
All right. So I think we're all in. You're at 4.2 billion.
Yes, I am.
The answer is for ChatGPT traffic in July.
Oh, wow.
It went down. That was a little sneaky one. Everybody thought, oh, it's so hot. It's just growing and growing and growing. It actually has plateaued and started on a downward climb.
So it's basically July's 1.5, not 1.6.
Oh, I got that wrong. Yeah, 1.5.
Wow, you even got the answer wrong.
Well, actually, nobody was really close except for Brian because, well, he just said one.
More than one.
More than one. Are you surprised that it's on the decline already?
Well, I am when I saw it. On the other hand, maybe it's because, let's say this, how do I put it? People who are, it's gotten to the point where people who are using it and paying for it in a lot of ways. There's always going to be a lot less paid users than there are going to be free users. And the free users, remember how we always characterized this in the beginning? It was a toy, right? It was a toy until the use cases. 40 billion Tunisian dinar. That's $11. So it was a toy, and now it's not a toy anymore. So the people who are using it are probably more continuous users. Oh, Brian, that means you get 14 billion Tunisian dinars, right?
You get a tip of the cap there, Brian.
You get 14 billion Tunisian dinars from Josh.
Yeah.
So anyway, maybe that's it. I'm spitballing the explanation that the people using it now are using it for more serious use cases. The ones who are playing with it have stopped playing with it now. They're probably tired of hallucinations.
It'll go back up when user conferences start up again. Well, some people were saying that because there are more competitors to ChatGPT out there, that maybe that traffic is now starting to get split into multiple directions.
That could be. So it would be interesting to see, let's say, some of the more prominent ones like Google Bard or something like that. And if they're on the upswing, or just some stat that says here's the generative AI stats other than ChatGPT, and see if they've been on the rise.
Well, it was a kind of a sneaky question, but
It was a good one.
It was a good one. It's interesting. See, even you thought it was interesting.
Yes, this one is the first one I'll acknowledge that I actually thought was interesting. The other ones,
which is funny because in some ways you've been closer on some of the other answers.
oh, I've been way closer on the other ones, and lately I've been much more wrong than I usually am.
Well, anyway, no one is wrong because we all have a good time and share in the delight of the weekly Stump the Godfather, brought to you by Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot.
Yes.
I like that.
By the way,
you know why I did that? Because I paused, so now I know how to. No, I know where to cut.
Oh, that's beautiful. So next time you say stomp, pause and go stump. That's the way to do it.
All right. All fun aside, that's probably not the best way to bring on our next.
That's right. Okay, let's go for the boring stuff now.
No, actually absolutely not, because the subject that we all kind of fell into, and you really, I think you were the first one that brought to my attention, which was really interesting, was the whole Zoom terms of services. I called it a ruckus.
The foot in the mouth by Zoom.
Yeah, the foot in the mouth, which, we're going to get into it. I'm actually going to ask you, because you traditionally are not somebody who's very worried about the private your data being out there, because you like, hey, I put it out there and I know what I said, and I know potentially how it can be used. I'm not worried about it. But you were the one that brought this one up and said, hey, this is a little bit too much for me. So we both thought this would be a really interesting topic. We'll bring on some folks that they might have a thought or two that they'd like to share, but set the stage on why we're even talking about this.
So for those of you who don't know, beginning of this week, Zoom put out or released a revised terms of service agreement. And in that agreement, it got interpreted, and I saw this through a guy who was, I can't remember his title, but he worked at JP Morgan, like futurist or something at JP Morgan. Terms of services basically said, to be relatively unfair to them, hi, all your content, all your data, we're going to use it to train our AI, and we don't really need your permission, and you're going to be granting us a perpetual license to use it. You still own it, but it's it's the things we all do sometimes with our content when we're working with vendors or companies where we have to maintain ownership, but we want to let them use it. It's a perpetual royalty-free license to use it, right? And they're basically saying, and you can't opt out. So now, what they did by doing that, I once told SAP years ago something. I told them, because they did something that was really dumb. And I said to them, you know what? You guys don't just put your foot in your mouth. First, you shoot yourself in the foot. Then I said, first you shoot in your foot. You know what? I just ruined myself. I ruined my own joke. I said, first you put your foot in your mouth, then you shoot. I said, you didn't just shoot yourself in the. Never mind. Forget it. I think I'll just pass by on this one. I'll try it later.
I'm going to get my eyes roll going now.
I'm going to be completely incoherent by the time I finish this. So anyway, what Zoom did was ridiculously dumb. They have been backtracking all week to try to explain it, but and their explanation, which we'll get into more in the discussion, is basically no, we didn't mean it that way. Okay, and we'll get more into that discussion. Well, that to me just triggered me. I remember the Facebook thing, and again, we'll talk about that later. I remember what Facebook did to itself a few years ago, and this really resembled it closely. It wasn't identical. So we put the word out, I basically had, I think, last I looked, about 4,500 views on LinkedIn, and there was I think what was 40 comments. It was a discussion began to erupt, and then of course you with your genuine genius at putting together things figured out, why don't we discuss this on the air, and why don't we discuss it as, is privacy been an illusion all along effectively, or is this going to create a resurgence in concern for privacy? And to do that, we
Nice
brought
segue, by the way. Nice segue.
thank you. I was better than that incoherent thing I was doing earlier. To do that, we brought two of the best, really. I mean, we brought analyst and good friend Josh Greenbaum, who we both known for years. And to introduce Josh, I'll just tell you a quick story about how I met him, and that will tell you everything you need to know about this incredible person.
You said quick story, didn't you?
Oh, this is really quick. I was at a conference. It was an SAP conference. Josh was at the same conference. I didn't know him at all. This is many years ago, like more decade and a half. And this guy stands up and asks this incredibly tough question, but it was not just tough. It was incredibly concise and intelligent and needed to be asked, but really tough. And I thought, holy crap, who is this guy? And I went over and met him as soon as this question was done and we had a break. That's Josh. He's also, by the way, incredibly gifted guy in many other ways, but that's Josh, the analyst right there. That I'll never forget it, because it was I had so much impact on me, the way he did it and what he did. All right.
By the way, when I first met him, I think I also said, holy crap, who is this guy? But maybe not in the same way that you.
Let me get out of here right now. Right now, Alan Berkson, again, longstanding friend. In fact, when I was writing for ZDNet, he wrote the most popular guest post in the history of my column on corporate narratives. No one ever topped it as a guest post. It was that popular. It was being read many years later by numbers of people every year.
Well, right? By Alan.
Right. Yeah, by Alan multiple times. Right. So Alan went to work for a long time for Freshworks, but he's always been, in terms of how he looks at the world, as really an analyst. Really, I mean, I'm not. He ran AR among other things. He was also a global innovator. He's an incredibly articulate guy. He's funny as hell. He's got a great gift when it comes to presenting a narrative, and he is the expert and probably the greatest.
The godfather of corporate narrative? Maybe?
Yeah, basically that. He is. I call him the godfather of corporate narratives. He and his buddy Jeff have put together methodologies and approaches that are brilliant. And so these are the two guys we're bringing on today to talk this through.
By the way, before we bring them on, Alan does have a really great sense of humor, but he has to, because he's a Jets fan and a Mets fan. I mean,
yeah.
But so sorry, dude. You missed it. And you missed what the Venerable Paul Greenberg actually said was the best one. So
even though I didn't get it right.
Didn't get it right, but he liked it. So.
Once again, destroying the myth of venerability.
But here they are, Josh and Alan.
Hi, guys.
Hey there.
Yay.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
Here he is.
Let's see what Brian is saying. When I first met Josh, it was, holy crap, who's the analyst wearing cowboy boots?
That should have been my thing.
Oh yeah, that was a thing once in an earlier, more agile life.
By the way, Brian also doing a little plug for his book, which we
by the way, I haven't read it yet, but I did read his original book and it was very good. I without reading it, I'm highly recommending it regardless. If history is any judge.
Oh, nice. Okay. And we'll just put the comment from Alan on here too.
Yeah.
Gotta have goals.
Alan, I'm on the same path, slightly better record, but not much more than that.
Yeah, but you have hope for 2024.
Not yet.
All right. So how do we start this? Well, first of all, Paul, let me ask you, because like I said, you're not a big stickler for privacy, but this one got to you. So why did this thing get to you?
Well, two reasons. I mean, look, years ago, and one of the reasons I'm not personally a big stickler about privacy is Ed Thompson said something which I mentioned many times on this show, which was, if you don't want it known, don't on the internet, don't write it. That was the way he put it. I remember this from maybe 20 years ago. And that's pretty much how I've operated ever since. The other thing, and the reason that I've never worried too much about it, although I'm not saying anyone else shouldn't, I'm just saying that's me, was because I've always assumed that if I'm using a service and it's, quote, free, it's not free, right? It's one way or the other. I'm providing them with something that makes them say, okay, in return, we'll give you the use of the service. That goes back to, but that also goes back to when you go over the line on that too. And that's what got me here. Years ago, if you remember, Facebook got into a very similar problem. It was found that Facebook was using the data of people who had left Facebook, and they continued to use it. It was in their terms of service that they could. And so I went crazy publicly on that one. And I said, look, I said, for those of you who think Facebook is free, it's not. It's a business. Your capital is giving them your data in order to use the service. However, when you're done with the service, the contract's also over, right? And consequently, they don't have the right to use your data anymore. Now, that went to lawsuits, and Facebook lost. This thing triggered me the same way, right? Which was these terms of service say, okay, well, and even their rollback, which is, yeah, well, no, we will allow opt out, but basically, if you look at the terms of service opt out, it's not really an opt out. I mean, it's not an opt out. It's basically saying, hi, if you don't want to use Zoom, which is the opt out, then we won't do that, right? But that's not an opt out, right? That's just a blackmail.
There's a detail there, if I may, and I'm last one to defend Zoom on this, but the opt-in, you have to opt in as the admin.
Right.
Service.
That's true.
The opt-out is if the admin is opted in on a chat, on a meeting that you're in, then you have to choose the opt-out. So, yes, but I think the larger question is that, again, the hubris of assuming that all we want to do is hand over not just our data. I think, to me, the shark got jumped because it wasn't just about me, which is already bad enough. It's about, I'm having a client meeting, proprietary information is going on. We're talking to, no, end of story. So I think they, and they walked it back somewhat, or disingenuously as well. So I think that the two.
See, and I think you hit a big key point with the disingenuous part of it too. I saw something today about the opt-out, and they would, I went to the CPO, what was her name? Sweeta, the one she's the one who commented. She commented on my post on ZDNet. I mean on LinkedIn. But she issued something today, this morning, and saying here's how it will work. And one of them was, if the host of the meeting turns on summary of services, the only opt-out you have is to leave the meeting. Right, that's it. I mean, that's not the way it works. I'm sorry, man. I mean, you want to talk about a ridiculous notion? I'm all for the exchange of data for services. It's part of the deal, and just reality. And again, I don't care personally what they do with it. I mean, I can tell you stories about how my data has been used, but the disingenuousness of it is astonishing to me. I mean, it's almost like they're lying, okay, and borderline lying just to get around it. I mean, it's just wordplay, right? It's just disgusting. I hate that.
Paul, I'm not going to defend them, but I just my thoughts around this are the history of our digital age is innovation without regard to consequences intended or unintended. And there's such a a pressure to innovate so quickly that it's hard to keep pace with the legalities, the privacy. So, you know, how many apps do you use on a daily basis, and how many terms of service have you read?
That's actually a fundamental
Rhetorical
point. I agree
question.
with. No, it's not. It's right.
And so, you know, if they don't come out with this feature, which everybody, oh, this is great. I do a meeting and then you're going to send me a summary after a meeting. I've seen it. It's fun. It's great. It's helpful. If Zoom doesn't do it, somebody else will. And I'm not saying that they're right to do it in this manner, but there's a pressure to do it. And for the most part, they've been able to do it because nobody's paying attention. You know, there's a great website, tosdr.org. It's basically terms of service didn't read, and they rank all of the terms of service and what it is you're agreeing to. I agree. I think you mentioned something about paying versus not paying. Look, you know, there's the adage that if you don't know what the product is, you're the product, right? If you're not paying for it, you're the product. But if you're paying for something, that changes the relationship.
Well,
and so, look, I think this is the tip of the spear, so to speak, in terms of putting pressure on companies, because now, you know, Zoom was the first one. It could have been anybody else. It could have been Microsoft Teams. It could have been any of the other video services. Or look, I'm typing emails every day on Google, and it's guessing what my next word. So it's tracking my stuff, and I didn't read the terms of service for my Google Workplace to see what they're going to do with that data.
230 pages.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I'll speak as a paying customer of Zoom. You know, that's just to reiterate, it was not easy finding the actual place where I could turn this feature on and off, much less actually being able to do it. I think that we're in an interesting moment, you know, in the sort of cultural history of privacy, you know, and privacy, which is, I think, where we're talking about privacy, and we're talking, you know, which, you know, ironically or interestingly, because it's so wrapped up in so many things, it's largely enshrined in the 14th Amendment, which comes from 1868, and that was among other things, that was the amendment that actually gave non-white men the right to vote. Didn't go far enough, and it wasn't enforced, and there's all other stories to it. But it also enshrined a bunch of stuff. You can't be deprived of life, liberty, property, nor shall private property be used for public use without just compensation. So it sets up a dynamic that we're supposed to, if this is our property, and that's a question, we should be justly compensated for it. We're also, ironically, you know, it's the same amendment that protects us against self-incrimination, against double jeopardy. It's got a lot of stuff in it. But we're now sort of ironically at this moment when privacy isn't just an interesting idea. It's front and center in our political sphere, whether, you know, Roe v. Wade was a privacy decision that was thrown out by the Supreme Court. So I think you know, I think what's fascinating about bringing this up now and really banging on it a little bit is that we've got this larger societal question of what is privacy, and what is our right to own our what we consider our stuff. Our stuff is,
Josh, that's also a related to that is identity, right? You know, right now, the AMPTP, the motion, you know, the television producers and motion picture producers are having a standoff with the Writers Guild and with SAG, and it's about being able to, you know, AI allows them to create infinite amounts of content with the likeness of somebody once they use it. There was one thing where he said, if you show up as an extra in one television show, we can put you in any show we want for the rest of, you know, eternity. So one aspect of his privacy, I'm a doctor and I'm doing a consult on Zoom. That should not be something that Zoom has access to or has any content. The other is my intellectual property, my identity. You know, that shouldn't be. That's also has to have a negotiation in terms of how you want to use it. And the challenge is, AI doesn't give you a lot of opportunity for you know, showing the work. Where does it come from? what's the word they use in
Provenance.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So so how do I say that this particular piece of this Mid-Journey image came from some artwork that we pulled off of some 1975 painting or something like that, right? So there's a lot of challenges, not just around privacy, which I think that's the most egregious. I mean, that's I think maybe where most people are probably not angry enough with Zoom. You're a medical professional, you're a lawyer, you're doing these. That is stuff that you have a obligation to your client for confidentiality.
Well, let me kind of in there because Alan, I never thought I'd say this, but that was really brilliant, Alan. You tied together what's going on with that strike with the writers and the actors and all that, and part of their argument is, yeah, you're gonna take something that I did once and then you're gonna use it all over the place, and I'm only gonna get paid once. And Zoom is kind of, I mean, that potentially is kind of what they're gonna take your conversation, which really wasn't meant for anybody else, but whoever's on that call for the most part, maybe but you don't have a say in how that's going to be used and monetized. And I think
you're not even being compensated. It's the other way around. I'm paying Zoom to allow me to have that conversation, and then they're going to use it.
Well, it goes to the thing we've all spoken about and written about too, which is what kind of ability do we have to control the life that we lead, right? And the reality is, and again, this is obviously theoretical and not the way it really works, but if theoretically our relationship to a company is, co-equal and partnered, meaning, okay, you give me choices, I will choose accordingly. Then this goes way beyond that. They said, no, you don't even have the right to you don't have the right to control it. Not only do you not have the right to control it, and to Brian's point, not only, and even less right do the people who you're talking to have to control any of this, and it's theirs. But we're not even given the opportunity to escape it. So
well, you do have that, like Josh said, you have this one chance not to opt in right up front.
But that's by saying divorce yourself from the world, right? That's divorce yourself from the world, and then don't sign anything ever, and then you won't do anything ever either, because you'll have no tools to do it.
Let's Zoom slightly off the hook and say how more universal this is.
Yeah, so we want to get universal with this.
And I want to pull in. So I had to use recently a medical device for a sleep apnea test. Have you ever had one? It's a little wrist monitor. Yeah. Has a pulse oximeter attached to it. I was fascinated with the idea that this thing captures the decibels of it actually captures sound. So I started looking at it, found the device, looked inside the terms of use. Oh my God, headache, head exploding. Then started looking at the details in about page 70,000. In there, there's a statement where, first of all, I, as the patient, have zero. Nothing is ever. I never gave them permission. My permission was given by my healthcare provider, but my healthcare provider, as you can assure, they're governed by HIPAA, but they barely understand that themselves. Who would? But there's a little gotcha in there, which I just want to quote very specifically, which says, in addition, if medical company or any of its subsidiaries, affiliates undergo any change in control or ownership, including merger, acquisition, blah, 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 your personal data may be shared with the parties involved in such an event.
Isn't that a violation of HIPAA directly?
You wonder, don't you?
Yeah.
Right in the middle of this company is not a U.S. company, so they may, in that event, try to wiggle out of it. But I just was like, oh my God, that company has they've got my BMI. I'm obese apparently, but they've got all this personal data. I never got it. No one asked. My healthcare provider isn't protecting me. Bam, it could be sold tomorrow, and that's biometric data. That's a whole other kind. of thing.
Well, yeah.
So I think Zoom sort of took it for for this for society in a way by being out in front of the stupid side of this.
Well,
Unfortunately,
that's the point. So, let's take it up a notch from Zoom. Is this potentially what standard operating procedures are going to be? Because, let's face it, most people I think haven't really, I shouldn't say I haven't been paying attention, but they haven't been too bothered with the current status of your data privacy up until this thing. Now, is this something that is just hitting people inside the bubble like us, or is this something that is really going to lead a resurgence of privacy? Because to me, it felt like there really hasn't been privacy for a long time, and this kind of took the veil off of even that illusion. Or
this is just Zoom making a bad PR move. It's not like this didn't exist, right? This has literally been the foundation of 90% of almost
an industry practice almost at this point.
Well, it's not an industry practice.
Everybody's
it's a general business practice.
Everybody's saying, I see so many people saying, I'm done with Zoom. I'm going to Teams. I don't know. Did you read the terms of service? I haven't, but have any of these people read the terms of service? And so it's really a knee-jerk reaction.
I'm going to WebEx.
No. I hope Liz Miller is listening. I'm going to Blue Jeans.
Oh God, no! Really, the worst of all.
I think they just shut it down. I think that was what.
Yay! Finally, took them long enough.
Look, I think from my perspective, privacy is a battle that is long over. It's now a question of finding the balance of, giving you the opportunity to maybe have some element of control, but in a digital age, I mean, somebody could be pointing a microphone at your window right now and reading what you're saying. So it doesn't even mean that you typed it on the internet. It's there are cameras, there are microphones. I mean, but the question of how companies should operate, you're right, Paul. This is a communications failure,
right?
And the comms team didn't understand what the product team did, and the product team didn't understand how to explain it to the world in terms of how to what it really means for them.
Well, the CEO came out yesterday and had a pretty basic post that I thought was pretty good. Pretty honest. I think the backtracking was obvious in there as well. But I think that I think Alan, you brought, what is everybody's talking about going to Teams? Is that just going from one end of the court to the other? Because all these, like Paul was saying, this has kind of grown into not just an industry practice, but just a general business practice. It's like, how much data can we get before people start paying attention? That's what it feels like we've been leading up to. Now, is this just one piece of just people in the bubble, even if it is kind of the first or the last step before we move into a new thing? What is the new thing? Is it just okay? Well, just don't come here now.
So let me ask you guys a question then, relative to all of this. That's just a different version of maybe the same thing, maybe different. So there was a lot of companies, if you remember, in our universe that had accumulated just tons of data over the years. So they decided to sell data services. And if you remember, the way they always put it was, well, don't worry, it'll be anonymized. But they're still selling your data either way, whether it's anonymized or not. It just doesn't have your name attached.
Yeah. Remember when Salesforce bought data.com and then they were all buying all these data?
Exactly, did it. There was dozens of companies who were doing it. Is something wrong? Is that okay? I mean, meaning, okay, it's not, is the data they're not asking you, they're telling the companies as part of the service, we have all this data, we will help you develop benchmarks and blah, 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 but it's anonymized data. So don't worry, companies giving us the data, we won't tell who you are. But they don't say, do you give us permission? They just are stating a fact, quote unquote. Is that bad? What is that?
Doing its thing. I think the problem of what is, how often and how and what to what degree are we giving up data continually is part of the issue. So I'm a fanatic about cookies. I'm trying to opt out every single time. It is a lot of work opting out every single time.
Yeah.
There's lots of tricks to it. You click all these things and then you press the right save button or you don't lose it. And the result, is someone who fanatically does that, partly just because I'm interested in trying to see how it works. It doesn't seem to have an impact. There's so much information.
What Brian just put on here, I think, is actually a key element.
Yep.
I love social media. I post pictures on Facebook, but one of the things I'm always very careful about is I will never post a picture of someone without their permission, because I don't have agency over their image and how they want to present themselves. And
so even if you took the picture of somebody else, you won't post it?
Not without their permission.
Let me ask. Okay, so let's ask a very specific example. Taking a picture of a city street in Paris. There's 100 people on that street.
Right. And I admit I'm a little conflicted about it. But what Brian wrote here is that what Zoom is doing is I have a contract with Zoom to provide video services, but the person that I'm having the conversation with has no contractual relationship with Zoom. And so why does Zoom have any right to have that particular content?
You know what that kind of brings up when people were building websites and they would go and use these third party like little widgets, and they would basically load their website with these widgets because it saved them time and it did something they needed done on their website. But those widgets were built with all these other tools that they were actually leaking data back to those tools. So even though you thought you were building this great website and you chose 3 widgets or whatever you want to call them to use, those widgets were then leaked like to 21 different other services. So, and then who knows what they're doing with it. It almost feels like we're kind of in the same situation with these these newfangled services now wanting to kind of do the same thing.
Well, but I bet most of those widgets were free, which means that they weren't free, that you were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're
always free, which is one of the enticements of using them. But then you find out, well, this one widget is loading up like tools from 11 different companies and sharing their data with those guys. And it kind of feels like we're almost in the same situation, or is this where we already are with not just talking about Zoom here. We're talking about all the platforms that are used for all of us to communicate with friends, family, customers, partners. Every interaction is now being leveraged because AI is saying, feed me. And the better, the more data you get, the more.
It didn't take AI to do that. It's been going on for decades.
But there's going to be class action lawsuits about this. I think Brian may have the best comment here, which is I can make choices about my privacy and what I choose to share. But when it goes beyond when somebody else doesn't have the ability to make that choice, to opt into that choice, that's problem.
And see, you're hitting the key is the word opt in here. I mean, the problem with almost everything you do, it's you're being given the right to opt into opting out, right? Meaning right, that's all it is.
But you're opting into on behalf of people that
that it doesn't even matter, even if it's you directly. It was where the problem is. Years ago, I was speaking at Zoho event, and I asked the audience, how many of you use opt out instead of opt in? And about 60% of the audience raised their hands. And I said, I hate all of you. Right?
Paul, look, you're a 60s guy. Turn on, tune in, opt out.
And Brent gave the world famous Leary eye roll right
there.
Wow, that was good, Brent.
That was a knee-jerk reaction. No, but I think even opting in on your own is one thing. Opting in on behalf of people who didn't
Well,
give you
that's
permission
still
to opt
opting out.
in.
That's opting out. You're not opting in on their behalf. They still
No,
they-
but
and
but the
they-
way
they're not,
this is-
I agree with you.
yeah, but the way that's what I'm saying. I don't. It just feels like there's too much. Nobody does anything where it's just you and somebody else, and it doesn't go anywhere else anymore. It's like it always goes somewhere else, or the potential is always there to go somewhere else. And the more people that you get using your platform, the more this is going to happen. So is this, and we haven't even talked about what does this mean in terms of, do we get legislation because of this kind of stuff at this point? Or are people, like somebody said, oh, they're hot right now, they're, it's important to them at the moment, but then the next time a new shiny object comes along, oh look, and they forget all about this, and it now becomes baked into what we will expect from
I'll answer a different question than you asked, just because I want to.
Can Brent opt out? Can Brent opt out?
Well,
I'm
well,
opting out of
because
this.
the question I think is how can vendors, navigate this going forward? And I think the ones who are, it's a mess, and there is no right answer, or there's no answer yet. It's
right.
so there's, and so, if you're Zoom, if you're Microsoft Teams, or anybody having to do with this, it's about transparency and giving people, just making sure they understand how you're doing, because that'll give you an edge. Because if you're the one coming out and saying, this is how we plan to use your data, this is how you can opt out of it, this is how you can create restrictions on it, because we're still trying to figure out what it all means, and so we want you along on the journey. That is the path to success, because you'll stand out. Whereas,
think of it this way. So to that, and take it a step further. If terms of, again, we're really talking a lot about, because they're the biggest, broadest agreements we're going to be dealing with, and they're also the ones to everyone's point, no one reads. With terms of service, right up front, it basically say, okay, we are giving you the opportunity to opt in. Here's what you get if you opt in. You don't get this if you don't opt in. Now, let's assume, I'm just riffing on this, but if you want to still get that, but don't want to opt into these things, here's an alternate way of doing it, which is pay us more or something like that, period. I mean, meaning in the very beginning of terms of service, the first thing you're doing to get to the general agreement is checking all those boxes, so to speak, before you even get the opportunity to see the rest of it, right? And if companies took that approach, they'd be a lot better off, because then there's no excuse for lack of clarity either, right? So I've thought about that.
A lot of benevolence that isn't there.
Oh, I agree with you. I think
I keep coming up against this. The idea that the corporate mindset is somehow beholden to some larger public interest, and even gives a rat's patootie about customer satisfaction, is mythological in a lot of our industry. And you can just look at the airline industry and their customer sat. They know how bad they're doing. Profits are up. Too bad. We the Zooms, the sort of callous Zooms of the world. I don't think it was necessarily a comms problem per se. I think it was a bigger issue of not give a shitism that is just there because it can be. Who can, so what? They'll get over it. That's what Scott McNeely said. You'll get over. They'll get over it. Who cares? Let's move on. You baseball fans, what the data you're giving to MLB. I mean, you don't think twice about it because you get something out of it. You love it, right? So no harm, no foul.
I actually pay for it, but
so let's wrap this
you
up.
Pay a lot for it, don't you?
Yeah.
Not as much as I used to.
So let's wrap this up because we're at the top of the hour. So bottom line, each of you guys, I like not answering my own questions, but you guys. So is this a moment of just the illusion going away? Privacy is not only dead, but we don't even expect anybody to try to make it look like it's alive? Or has this caused a real reason for the masses to rise up and have a resurgence of data privacy that they are not going to, as I said yesterday at the happy hour, they're mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore? Which way is this going from here?
My answer is 1.6 billion.
So you should have said just anything over one.
Yeah, anything over
Right.
one.
And my answer is, Brent, you and I are being chased by a bear. I don't have to outrun the bear. I just
Right.
have to outrun you.
Right.
And
Alan, you're getting eaten up, buddy. I'm sorry.
and that's the challenge, is that the bar is so low. What Josh said about the airline industry or others is the bar is so low, and there's so much uncertainty, and there's such a demand for the novelty of GPT, right? Generative content, and being able to do the cool stuff that it does. There's such a demand. Summarization, it's all there, and so people are leaping in, just like they did with social media, because it was novel and fun and gave them that adrenaline rush or that dopamine hit. The same thing. And so until there's a monetary hit to somebody, there's a class action lawsuit, or there's some way that is going to really impact a quarterly earnings. Right now, how many people quit Zoom this week?
I doubt anyone.
Right. And so therefore, next week, nobody cares. So until there's some sort of a financial penalty or for anybody,
Or regulatory penalty.
or, well, that would lead to the financial, right, regulatory penalty,
Right.
but the regulators can't keep up with it either. So that
Well,
doesn't sound too
I've been
encouraging.
watching a movie in 30 years on the nature of Oppenheimer. Oh, gee, I didn't know what I was doing, and now I feel bad.
Well, the other side, would be interesting. Well, two things, I guess, two comments. One is, even on the regulatory side, I mean, there've been some really, really, really hefty GDPR fines. I mean, in the billions of dollars or euros at least, and doesn't seem to impact the way the companies
the
operate
HIPAA
at
wall of
all.
shame
Right.
gets millions of dollars every year. It's not just they don't care; they don't know how to care.
Right.
It's and that's part of it.
I think that's the big part. The other, so there's a question that this is not answerable here, but
sure.
so how many B Corps are doing this too? Right, their job is to care. Right, they're registered to care. Right, and they're literally getting tax breaks to care. Right, and I'm really curious as to how many of them are in absolutely the same kind of violation that we're talking about in general. I'm going to actually see if I can find out.
That would be sad.
That would be beyond sad, but I don't doubt that it's there.
Well, again, that could be more the ignorant side. It is hard to know how to do this as the consumer. It's hard to know how to do this as the vendor. It's hard because it's
fingers crossed.
It's so complicated. So,
I could live with an ignorant B Corp rather than a venal one.
I don't know. I think the irrational tech exuberance seems to win out over the practical issues that we're talking about, because that bright shiny object is so I guess it's like when Eve came to Adam with the apple. He knew he shouldn't take the bite, but it's kind of hard not to, and once you have, it's kind of hard to let it go. And I feel like these companies, they kind of know that. They know this right now. They know it.
Right. So I'll leave it one note. When Siri first came out, IBM banned the use of Siri in their headquarters because they looked at it as a security problem, IP security problem.
All social was like that in the beginning.
Is Siri gone?
Well, kind of.
it's not doing that well.
But I use voice command on my phone every day to do some sort of every single day. Dictation.
Yeah, me too.
And so it goes from being novel to being a necessity.
I will say there is some hope in one regard. That Facebook thing I referenced earlier, they really did get trashed and slammed and hurt by it. I mean, this was not a small thing. And those terms of service are those that now look, Facebook and Meta, whatever you want to call it, still is a crappy company as a company goes, but those that part, long gone, right? And it's not nowhere is it. I actually read year before last, the Facebook terms of service, just because I wanted to see if it was still. It's nowhere to be found. But and so there is some hope in
But
that
yet,
regard.
yet and still, that very same company put out that thing Threads,
Well, that's just
and 100 million people signed up for it in 5 days.
yeah. But here's the deal: if they stop using it, Facebook legally now can't use that data anymore.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, it doesn't mean I don't know what they do illegally, but
We'll see.
I'm just saying by terms of service, they can't do that. So,
Well, all right, folks. Well, this is
We did not solve anything, did we?
not at all.
I think we don't have to worry about anything anymore ever again.
It was a good way to spend an hour. So, there it is. So, no, it's always fun talking to you guys, bringing you in here. You guys with so little opinions and little to say, but
It was good. I
Anytime,
well, don't.
I can talk we can do this all day.
All I can say
Okay,
is,
Josh.
as a dad, I live for eye rolls. So you know what
I
Tim
saw that. That's great. Yeah, dad jokes and eye rolls. Yeah.
well, and thank you for being Playaz pals. How do you like that, Josh?
We have to create a new program now.
Shouldn't the pals be a Z though?
Yes.
PALZ. You're right.
Pals.
Yeah.
Okay, well, but then the question: how does that work with plays and residents?
Ugh.
It creates an interesting thing. Josh, we may have to talk to you about player and residents, which would simplify everything, right?
Well,
my
Paul and Brent-
DMs are open.
You know what?
Alan is a play in residence, so
Okay.
okay, so
All right,
he's already.
I'll get my agent to contact.
I was going to say when we unionize and start telling you our demands, we'll get you.
That works.
Well,
Look, don't forget, I'm a former union organizer, so I know all your tactics.
we'll have a Zoom meeting on this a little later.
Yeah, right. Okay.
All right, folks. Well,
Thank you for inviting me, guys.
Oh, it's awesome
Pleasure.
as
Good to
always.
meet you.
Thanks for coming on.
and let's give
Many
a
more
shout out
coming up.
to Brian because he was lighting it
Brian
up.
was
Yeah.
the sleeper candidate.
Look
I
at
didn't think
this one
definition
comment,
of transparency is a good one.
but this one comment almost covered up both your faces. I mean, it was so long; it was like a paragraph there.
Yeah, that was probably deliberate.
We saw your glasses.
All right, guys. Well, so on behalf of Josh Greenbaum, on behalf of Josh Greenbaum and Alan Berkson, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Playaz, and when we say that, I'm trying to find the image so that we can end the show. There's the image.
There she is.
Yay.
Minnie.
We can end the show now. Bye.
Mwah.
That does
Minnie.
it.